back. All
Yeah.
right.
So the interesting part of this is that a lot of people confuse this with the country Sudan, but what historically throughout the Sahelian region of Africa was called the Sudan. So there was an Eastern Sudan and a Western Sudan, or Soudan, and it spread all the way from Western Africa all the way into where Sudan is right now. So there's a east and west, but the only place that kept the name is the modern day countries of North and South Sudan.
Hmm. So wow, that,
So so as you can see there, there's a flag. It's a green and red flag, and I know that there's some resemblance to the Moroccan flag, and there's a story, there's a backstory behind that. But given the proximity, there's cultural influences on both sides. But yeah, as you can see, it's a star. Um, this what it would have depicted by generations ago, and the title is West African Crypto Jews because a great deal of them are would be considered Beni Anosim today, and other variations of assimilated Jewry.
that's heavy. You say, can you repeat
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so basically, they would be considered B'nai Anosim or other variations of crypto Jews.
Wow, man.
And another thing to mention, Bilad El-Sudan means land of the blacks in Arabic. As you know, there was an Arabic influence in the writing script, which we've had for, you could say, roughly a millennia until the British and French influences. And so that was our main writing scripts, and even influenced the linguistics to some pedigree, given the writing system that was used.
Hmm. Wow, man, amazing, amazing, amazing. See this. You let me know as well too when you're ready to switch
Yeah,
slides.
so let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
So yeah, the Jews of Bilad Sudan, also known as Songhai Jews, if we were to use a modern day connotation, are a collective of Jewish migrants and nomadic tribes that settled in the Ghanaian, Malian, and Songhai Empire and present day Mali, Niger, Senegal, Gambia, Cape Verde, and Saint Tome. Now, when we say collective of Jewish migrants and nomadic tribes, what we mean by that is that you had Jews who were fleeing persecution in other locations throughout I guess you could say a period of a millennia from the 6th century all the way up into the 16th century. There was a Jewish migration for that. There was also nomadic tribes, especially in areas like in Morocco, that had their own, I guess you could say, cultural areas and hills and valleys, and they decided to come down um, in that area. So you had different types of groups, but for the most part, they had a Sephardic influence. The reason why we say Ghanaian, Malian, and Songhai empires because they were there over a course of millennia, identifying as such, while different empires was existing. So they traversed over three different empires and still maintained a civilization. So that's pretty interesting. When we refer to the Ghanaian Empire, we're not referring to the modern country as Ghana as today, just like we were talking about Bilad El Sudan. It's not referring to the country Sudan. It's the same situation here. This is actually a bit north of modern day Ghana, closer to the Sahelian region. Um, the Malian Empire is basically the Mali Empire, but it wasn't limited to the modern country of Mali. It also spread out um, into other places as well, similar to the Songhai Empire. So that's basically that. So let's keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So the Jews of Bilad Sudan, as we mentioned, has its earliest accounts back to the 6th century and 7th century period with Zuhair Aman, a member of the Yemenite Jewish communities, which was voluntarily moved by the Haramite kingdom by the Ethiopian kingdom of Anaxim in the 6th century after the defeat of Dol Nemas. Now, basically, in long story short, there was a conflict undergoing in Yemen, and there were some Jewish minorities that saying, okay, well, we're Tamanim, we're most likely to face some persecution in particular cities or villages that we're living in. Let's find somewhere else to go. So the kingdom of Anaxim, which is in partially of modern day Ethiopia, decided to help them. As you know, Anaxim spread even into Yemen today, so
Hmm.
they had influence over there. And they decided, to, okay, let's go near the Niger River. So they decided to settle around there and start developing a community. And the reason why around the Niger River, well, because it's very fertile. It's easier to grow crops rather than going all the way into the Sahel in the desert. It was just better to go in an environment where it's easier to grow crops. As you can see, this is a page of the Tariq Al Sudan or Es Sudan, depending on the context. You can find pages all throughout this book that talks about these Jewish communities. As you know, as I mentioned before, Arabic was the writing script for, I guess you could say, roughly a millennia. And it just mentions here about Zuleiman and the small Yemenite Jewish community that took place there.
Wow. See, this is heavy because speaking even on Yemenite Jews, not many people know how far that extension would have came into the Africa, like beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, like the scriptures would denote.
Exactly.
No one looks at it that way because there's a community that I know of in Tanzania, if I'm not being mistaken, and I think in Kenya or something like that, which I believe they say that they're an extension of this community. So we could see that we could see this get carried on, like you said, into to Niger and Niger River and stuff like that. So wow, this is big. This is big, and this is from a book that can be accessed.
Yeah, so a lot of these are coming from manuscripts of books that are typically in museums, which is why we're creating a book that would be taking excerpts from these hard to find books. And some of these sources come from books that are really large, very difficult to access, and then really expensive. So we're going to be making an inaccessible storyline that will be much cheaper and much easier to understand.
Ah, man. Huh. Mm. Okay. Want me to go to the other slide or
Yeah,
continue?
sure.
Okay.
So yeah, since there was this Tamanim Yemenite Jewish community near the Niger River, they started to grow and they become more well known to other Jewish communities, and other migrants felt like, okay, well, if they're doing okay, let's start migrating in the area. They're not facing a whole load of anti-Semitism, so let's see what's over there. Let's develop ourselves there. So you had more Jewish migrants from Morocco, from Egypt, from Portugal, Sephardim, and they established communities all across what became at this time the Songhai Empire. But there was one particular community in one city in Tirmidhi or Timida called Bani Israel, which is an Arabic way of saying Bnei Israel or children of Israel, and 1402. And the reason why it's in the Arabic way because of the Arabic influence in North Africa. And I'm pretty sure some of them also spoke Ladino as well.
Uh-huh.
Um, so 1492-ish, they had a community, and not only did they have a community, but they was able to develop a Jewish dynasty. Now you don't see that too many times in throughout history. So when you're reading a lot about Jewish communities, it's usually exclusion, and they don't really have much of a defense. But this is one of the few Jewish communities throughout this period that actually had an army of 1,500 men, and we're talking about at those days, at that population of the world that was much smaller. You had in just one city alone an entire army of 1,500 of Jewish, and usually Jews are really small numbers, and in various communities, and they had about 333 wells. So going from having a little area near the Niger River to having wells all across this entire empire. I think that's and just as one city alone, it makes you wonder how many they had throughout the empire. They also had seven princes. So, as you could say, that this was a real dynasty that has been overlooked in history that should be talked about more. But in the book, we'll be talking about those princes and what we know about them. But yeah, I mean that's a pretty interesting story of a Jewish royal army
Wow, man, a Jewish royal army, man. Y'all hear that?
in
We
Mali,
in Mali,
in the Songhai Empire.
Songhai Empire, on the continent of Africa. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Wow, man. Like, this is it, man. We're gonna be bringing this stuff out. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna be continuing to bring this stuff out. Hold on. Boom.
So let's see. During the Inquisition, more Sephardic Jews fled to the Senegambia, Cape Verde, Saint Tome. During this time, the king of the Songhai Empire, Axia Muhammad, around 1492-ish, decided to make it illegal to be Jewish. Now, how do you do that? Well, obviously, you can't strip someone's genetics or ethnicity, but you could dissolve the tradition and the practice of Judaism from them. And that's basically what the idea was. Either you leave certain cities and you go to other ones, or you have to convert to Islam right then and there. Most of them had to convert to Islam. Others went into the Jollof area, even though the Jollof Empire succeeded. It was still called the Jollof area, and they migrated into those areas as well. And then because of that, even after this, they continued to go to the Jollof area, which is Senegal and Gambia, instead of going into the inner part of the Songhai Empire, because that's where the most majority of their forces were. And they saw this as a threat because of those Jewish armies that were continuing to grow. If in 1402 you had 1,500 Jewish soldiers in just one city alone in Timada, can you imagine Inquisition period um, and what the population was at the time? So they felt threatened that this could go from an Islamic to a Jewish dynasty, Jewish Songhai. So they just said, okay, you know what? We're going to shut you guys down. You guys are going to dissolve into the community. You guys are too well organized, and we're going to make shut you down. So what happened was they dissolved primarily into the Suniki and secondly into the Wolof community. Even before they were forced to dissolve and forced to assimilate and became crypto Jews, a great deal of them were speaking a Suniki tongue, and they were Suniki speaking Jews, which will be talked about in the book as well. And that's because they chose to live primarily in those tribes, and then you had some, people from those communities that would convert, marrying into the community, and it would grow, and then they started using that dialect and merge it with the Judeo-Arab or Judeo-Spanish, and influence it together and make it one new culture based off Sephardic and West African tradition.
Whoa, 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 whoa. So I have a question. So
Yeah.
so with that being said, we know, like, in parts of Africa, well, people usually highlight North Africa, like close to, like, ones coming in through Spain there, and ones have what you call like Judeo-Arabic. Is it that this community might have had been keeping the same form of Arabic than the average Muslims around, or did they kind of mix it in, as you said, like they assembled themselves into other tribes? Did they kind of like mix the language in with the tribes that they assimilated themselves in?
Yeah. So basically, there were some. So generation after generation, it became more like native speakers, as you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So certain words may have been kept, but then since they were in larger tribes, amongst larger tribes, when they assimilated, only a few words you could say that were Hebraic that you could find today.
Okay.
That'll be also in the book, but
Mm-hmm.
there are strands. There are strands, and you could say that even the culture in the Suniki community was influenced by this as well. Forgot to mention that Dinga Sise, which is to be like the founder, of the tribe. Interestingly, the story says that he was either from Yemen or Syria, Palestina. So you can see the connection from the first Songhai Jew, the first Jew of Bilad Sudan, being Zuwayl from Yemen. Now the founder of the Sunniki clan is also from Yemen
Huh.
or Syria, Palestina. So there's a connection to be made. Why is that this one tribe where a lot of Jews assimilate into having the same origin story as the Jews who migrated there? It's because this community was heavily influenced by Jews that assimilated to the tribe, and now people from this tribe are saying, well, we know that the founding fathers of our community came from one of these two places. Well, why is that? It's because, well, you have a strong Judeo influence into the folklore, but is actually part of the history, you know? And some would say that is an Islamic story, but then why does it say that he was Jewish in some passages? So if it was to be a Muslim, they would say that they're Sahid, as some other communities would claim that they're descended from Muhammad, but that wasn't the case. This was a very distinct connection to the Songhai Jews. And as you can see in this photo here, this is a Bani Israel community, the same type of way that is written in the history books as like the ones that were in Mali. They call themselves Bani Israel as well. Today, these communities are Muslim, as most of them are, and most
Mhm.
of them are dissolved into everyday communities. But this one still kept itself in existence in Senegal. And they said their story. Well, they were coming from Egypt. Now, as we mentioned prior, you had Jews that were actually coming from Egypt into the Songhai region, and that is in history books. So you could definitely find this historical realities. And then they were also mentioning how there was other Jews that went into other places in Western Africa that actually are documented. So you do have a remnants of people that still has it as part of the culture influence that, oh, we come from here, we come from there, and we were doing something else, but we don't really know exactly what it is, but the hints
Mhm.
are there. And that's the same story for overwhelming majority of the crypto Jews in other places that would say, oh, we heard that we're from this place or that place. I think your story that you mentioned one time about Assyria, it's stuff like
Mhm.
that where it's like, it's the
Mhm.
region, but we don't know why. We
Yeah, you
just say
know.
about it.
Okay. Wow. So what ties does this community necessarily have with, like, what you would say, the Berber Tuareg connection to Bani Israel, as like there's some history of them too. Would they have came in contact, or was this like a different community in its whole, kind of separately from that community?
So it was a mixture of both. Actually, they were having communication, given that they were right next door. And as
Mhm.
you know, I mean, you can see even like there's a lot of cultural influences, especially because
Yeah.
of the Muslims.
Mhm.
And around the 10th, 11th century, you had the Almoravians that did defeat the Ghanaian Empire, so they had a lot of influence even at that time. And then you must have had migrants that settled, Mauritanians as well. That's how some of us get our influence from there because they migrated southwards into greener areas, especially into Senegal. So you would have Tuaregs that would migrate to Senegal into the more green areas. Same
Mhm.
reason why Zueleman chose near the river. It was just because of the agricultural capabilities. If there were Jews in North Africa, they've remained very close to the coastal areas because they was near to the water. So those who were kind of in the middle, they kind of made the decision of going somewhere either south or north, and then these communities decided to go south.
Wow, man, that's powerful, guys. That's Hear this information being brought out, man. Like, this is information you're not gonna get anywhere. You know what I'm saying? When we speak about Jews in Africa, it's usually focused on a small, on just specific Jews in Morocco and stuff like that. No one wants to take it a little bit lower down into the Sahel, or what they call today sub-Saharan Africa. Um, this is price information right now, and let me share my screen, because what I would like you to do also is to, let me go back. What I would like you to do is to um expound kind of on the book that you're writing, that you mentioned throughout this season. We know that what inspired you to create the book. We know what you brought you to the research. But your main inspiration, and what's your main target of people or communities that this book should be touching? Like, who should be buying this book and reading it more than anyone? We want everybody to get the book,
Of
but
course, of course.
who are we focusing on this to?
So I'll answer your first question on what led me to want to write this book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've been doing this research for some years now, actually, and I've been pretty quiet, pretty shy, just learning things on my own about heritage and things of that nature. But because it took me so long to get a lot of these sources, and you could find a decent amount, so I guess you could say on Wikipedia, and then you could look at the sources. But there's extra sources that you have to go in between, different books that are very old, unpopular, in the bookshelves that nobody reads. You have to go, you have to dig deep, and it's like it's a hassle. So most people are not going to go through it unless this is something that they're really passionate about. And some
Mm-hmm.
people just want to read, so they don't want to have to go through 20 different books just to find out about a community. They want to go to one particular area and find out. And so that's something that I'm putting myself to doing, to make it accessible to people who don't have maybe the same access to internet, maybe the time over the years to do this research. It would be a lot more feasible for people. Now, when you mentioned who should read it, of course, we want everyone to read it. I think that it would be fair that people who are from these communities will be reading it the most, and to learn a bit more about this part of the heritage and much this part of the history, given the fact that it has been a lot of assimilation, and because of the forced Islamization in these communities, you know that there is this anti-Semitism that has grown in the area. And when people say the word anti-Semitism, sometimes you get like this blank statement. Oh, what does that mean? It does have a connotation, and it becomes that, oh, the term Jew or Jewish kind of has like this, oh, this is a foreign people. We don't want to seem different. We don't want to seem like we're separate from the rest of the community.
Yeah.
So we just want to stay over here and assimilate. And it's socially acceptable to be the majority. So no one wants to be the minority. And this is kind of what we're talking about here. So the goal is to have this in English, have this in French, have this in Arabic to these communities, especially, you know, people in their teens, in colleges over there and universities all across Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Cape Verde, around these areas, and really just learn about this history. And maybe they could learn something, and maybe even have ties to it. Maybe they answer some of the questions that they have in their families that they don't fully know the answer to. Why does our story of our creation of our community have this elements? Why do we
Mm-hmm.
do certain things a certain way? Is this from an Arab tradition, or is this from a Jewish tradition, or is this from a? So it would clear up some confusion that people have, and maybe just give them a different perspective on life. That there's other ways to look at things, and history is very colorful. It's very nuanced. It's not black and white. It's not either you one thing or another. It's like, let's look back and see who your ancestors were, and there's no shame of that. It's really encouraged. I encourage people to look back and see what they might find, and learn a bit more about themselves. And that's something that I've done for some years now.
Wow, man, I commend you on the studies, man, and the research, and the fact that you're gonna bring this out in a book. You know what I'm saying? We need more ones like us to be have the time to, and the information and the knowledge to be able to bring forth, you know what I'm saying, documents and books with sources, and ones can go back to other communities across the world. They have been able to write books, or publish certain things out, which then legitimizes their status is who, as who they are, and stuff like that. And a lot of that is a gray area coming from this kind of an area in the world. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people look at ones that are now coming back into it from these areas as maybe a convert, or someone that, like, you know what I'm saying, seen Judaism one day and was like, oh, like this is what I want to be a part of now, da, 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 without realizing that a lot of things are genetic memory, and a lot of things are like, you know what I'm saying, aren't really that far fetched than a lot of people think. So I'm sure there's a lot of people right now in these areas we're speaking about that just have some calling in them that's telling them something. And like you said, they're probably Muslim and they might be reading this Quran right now and they're just seeing Bani Israel, Bani
Right.
Israel. They're like,
Exactly.
is this, am I crazy or is this me? What is this? So
Exactly.
to be able to link it together and have it documented, like there's nothing can cross it. That's like high works. You know what I'm saying? So yo, we give thanks to have you on the platform, and you already know we're gonna do this as much as we can to bring out this information. And like you said, we're targeting it at younger ones that are coming up, and you know what I'm saying, people that are already studied and or are reading and are open to certain kind of information, because you know what I'm saying, you look up this stuff and like you said, you're gonna have to dig through different piles of stuff in order to get to this kind of information. And you know what I'm saying? So yo man, toda rabba for your time, be on here. And you know, I'm gonna have you do a closing whenever you want to share with the people. Let them know where they can find you.
Of
And
course, of course. Yeah, so you could find me at Or Shalom or Shalomi, as you could say, O-R Shalomi, Shalomi, and we will be releasing this book some point this year or the end of the year, but we will surprise you. So it could be earlier, it could be later, but we will be releasing it. You will be able to get an ebook or hardcover. We are working on an affordable price. The most important thing of this is not about profit, it's about getting knowledge and history to people who needs it, who wants to learn, who really wants to sit down and take the time. Forget the money. Are you willing to sit down, read page to page, cover to cover, and really retain the information and tell people about this, or implement it into your life? That's what I really want to know. So I really hope you guys have learned something today. A good friend here, Nasi, he could really give you a lot of insights about a lot of information here. So this is a really great source to learn about assimilated Jewish communities, lesser known communities, and how they make up actually the larger fold of the Jewish world.
that's key right there. You heard that? What he just said makes up the largest fold of these communities, man. Wow, man. Like I said, Toda Rabbah. Bless for anyone tuning in now and anyone that will tune in the future. Please go follow this man on social platforms, anywhere. Ask him the questions that you need to ask him. Let's all get together and unite as one community, as one people, and a had, right? Oh man,
Yes.
love and blessings, man. Yeah, you mean until next time, yeah?
All right.
See,
Shalom.
shalom.